Okay, let's start. So thank you everybody to join this webinar that the IHE PaLM coaches kindly offer to share today. Before we discuss the pathology and laboratory profiles, I will just give you a short reminder on the IHE Connectathon. So this year, again, we will be in Rennes, in France, the last week of September. Registration is still open and will remain until end of May. If you register by tomorrow, you will get 20% off discount on your system registration, thanks to the early bird price. But we have other discounts you can check, especially for the laboratory domains. We are seeking systems to test the LAW and LTW profiles, or some of the actors in this field. It means that you can get a 50% discount if you bring a system that implements LAW or LTW. To register to the event, you will first need to go to Gazelle Test Management, so that's the tool we use for to manage the Connectathon, from the registration to the publication of the results. And you will have to create your account if you are new and register your system, tell us who will attend in Rennes, and generate your contract. And then we will invoice you and you will be ready to start testing. So here is Gazelle homepage. So there's something you need to know when you want to submit your contract. You need to make sure your system are in the completed status. So that's something you have to do manually when you edit your system. Otherwise, you will get a blank page. All the documentation you need, all the pointers are on Gazelle homepage. So you will find all the technical documentation here if you need to refer to it. And here you have the link to our Moodle tool that gathers all the training, and this video and the slide will be part of the training material for sure, along with the recordings from the other domain webinar. So early bird and today, or let's say tomorrow. And so if you want to save your seat at with 20% discount, you can just make sure that we'll receive your contract by tomorrow, end of business. So today, Raj, Alessandro, and Ricky will introduce you the IHE PaLM domain. If you have any questions, put them in the chat and we will make sure to answer them. So Alessandro, the floor is all yours.
Okay, so I will share my screen again. Okay, just a couple of slides ahead.
You're on mute, Alessandra. But we could see the slides right, but you are on mute.
Okay, sorry. Okay, now it should be fine. I was saying, okay, just a couple of slides ahead, and okay, here we are. This is the agenda. So Ricky, I think I give the floor to you to start the
Yes.
the webinar. Okay.
Thank you, Alessandro. So we're going to give you a brief overview of the PaLM domain, the work we're currently working on, and then we're focused most of our time on the profiles for the September Connectathon, and then we'll have probably plenty of time for questions and answers. So next slide. The next one. So you probably already know you're here, but a brief introduction on why IHE. So IHE uses different international standards and applies them to specific use cases, highlighting, taking the benefits of all the different profiles and combining them so that your use case can be as standardized as possible. And what you're about to do is going to the Connectathon, which is one of the major advantages of using IHE profiles, because you can test them, against your system, against a validation, but also do system-to-system integration tests at the Connectathon, which will help find things that we missed when we wrote the profiles, but also will test the abilities of your system to properly utilize these profiles. And at the end of the Connectathon, you can publish your test results and statements, and your partners that you're going to integrate with in the future will know that your system is ready to cover those use cases. So next slide. So there are different domains in IHE, and the pathology and laboratory medicine is one of the domains. It's been around for quite a while, but you can, on the slides, there's links to all the different domains as well if you need to look around some more. Next slide. So specifically, the pathology and laboratory medicine domain is the exchange of digital assets and associated services performed on specimens by clinical and pathology laboratories. It includes the analytical and peri-analytical automation, and it talks about the exchange, or it defines the exchange of structured data related to specimen management, long-term storage, and it also supports the secondary use of laboratory observations and related clinical observations, and includes transfusion medicine. Next slide. So these are some of the IHE systems that play in the PaLM domain space. And so if you see one of your systems on here, then you can play too. So next slide. These are the different profiles we support. I think you need to do some clicks here. So we start with external workflows. So this is talking outside the lab. There is the laboratory technical testing workflow, and we're going to talk much more about that. You can see the different colors identify whether they're in final text, that's an F, whether they're in trial implementation, that's a T in blue, or whether they're in development, that's a D in purple. So the external workflows, the laboratory testing workflows between the ordering provider and the laboratory, as is the laboratory clinical communications profile, which is the LCC, where the laboratory can make some suggestions of changes around the orders that have been placed earlier. The LPOCT, that's for point of care testing, and the LBL profile, that's for labeling of specimen containers. So all these are communication outside the lab. The other outside the lab process we're supporting is the interlaboratory workflow. So that is sending orders to other laboratories to perform that testing. And then not especially or directly test related in terms of ordering, but reporting of the results to either back to the provider, but also to public health, for example, are the three here on the bottom right. The XD Lab, which is quite heavily used for reporting lab results in Europe. The EPSR, which is CDA based and used to report anatomic pathology structured reports. So that is discrete anatomic pathology data is exchanged, and then the anatomic pathology public health report that's in trial. So on the right hand side, we talked about the processes mostly with external partners, but there is internal automation on the bottom left here, which the LDA is the automation profile. So setting up your tests, the pre-analytical workflow is the LAW. So this is ordering your tests on the instrument itself. So that's for interfacing with the analyzers, and I'm going to talk more about that later. And then the LSH, that's for automation of the laboratory specimen handling. Basically, if you're using lab automation systems and you're shipping your samples from one place to another, it's describing that. So that one is still in development and not out. We have a digital pathology portfolio where we're working on trying to take the processes that we have defined for the clinical laboratory domain and apply them to the digital pathology realm. And Dr. Dash is going to talk more about that. We currently have 2 profiles available there. And then we talked about the PaLM domain, including transfusion medicine. And so we are working there also on a portfolio of profiles. And so far we have covered the reporting of adverse events. That's the TMA profile. So those are all direct connections between different stakeholders or lab internal. Wait, not quite yet. Mm-hmm. We're missing 2 more. But then we have some services that are used for announcing what catalog tests, announcing your catalog, so what tests the laboratory offers. So that's the LCSD profile. And then the specimen event tracking profile, and Alessandro is going to talk more about that. But those are 2 profiles that are kind of more cross-cutting across the different stakeholders. So it's hard to put lines onto this diagram. So with that, next slide. We're going to talk about digital pathology profiles, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Dash.
Thank you very much, Ricky. As you saw, there's many profiles that are in trial or in development. So the pathology and lab medicine domain is very active, and I'm very excited to share with you the work that we've done in digital pathology and welcome your involvement moving forward. Next slide. So in a nutshell, in a single slide, this is the entire digital pathology workflow. Although the names at the tops indicating the actor roles might seem a little obtuse, in reality, they're all information systems that you're probably very familiar with the order placer to the far left being your EHR, generally speaking, your order filler being your LIS, your acquisition manager being your software that runs the scanner, then your acquisition modality is the scanner itself, and then you have your PACS systems as the image manager archive, your display system to the far right, and then evidence creation in terms of what we can do with these digital assets. And so what we tried to do is think about the entire digital workflow, starting from use cases that are already in play today or will be become more prevalent in the future, and then think about how all these systems interact with one another. The work that we've done so far, I think if we click one more, we'll see the different profiles and how they map here. So as part of this holistic workflow, we took the first step with the kind of big chunk of first acquiring the digital image. We saw that as kind of the foundational step. And you can see that the digital pathology image acquisition bubble covers many of the actors. But what this picture doesn't represent is all the gaps that currently exist that we need your help with. So right now, we do have transactions in place that I'll go into in a little bit more detail for working with a digital scanner to scan in a digital image from a glass slide to generate a whole slide image. What we don't have and what these other profiles represent are ways in which to interact between information systems to do more with that image once you've acquired it. So for example, one of our vendor partners that we're working with, recognize that DPIA doesn't allow a PAC system currently to be able to interact with an LIS system to pull in metadata to completely populate the DICOM metadata associated with the image data. So that's certainly a significant constraint, but we're under active development of DPIO, and at our face-to-face meeting coming up soon in Budapest, we're hoping to make significant progress on that and hopefully get that out this summer. It's really important if you are aware of a vendor in this space to have them check in, look at our webpage, look at the use cases, identify if there's use cases that we've missed, and then identify if the transactions that we're saying need to exist between these information systems would fit well with the ecosystem of your product, of that vendor's product, and if so, great. But the more the merrier. And if there's limitations or constraints or things that we've missed, as we've identified with the first trial implementation of DPIA, then even more important that you're engaged and part of the process and helping us to really create a robust set of profiles to cover all of the important and common use cases dealing with digital pathology. And so I'll move on to the next slide. We'll go into this in a little bit more detail. So as I said, evaluating the use cases is important. We already have 10 use cases on the website that cover everything from primary sign out to consultative reviews to image co-registration, getting very specific, as well as immunohistochemistry and other types of uses for the digital image workflows. One of the areas I didn't mention was evidence creation. We haven't gotten to that yet, but we're really looking for vendors to get into that space. Obviously, the promise of digital pathology is to be able to do something with these images that allow for automation and application of artificial intelligence and machine learning and data image analytics. That's all going to be covered in the evidence creation profile. So taking a digital image and then creating new evidence around it as part of this holistic workflow for digital pathology. So very excited to get some interest generated there and to create some critical mass so that we really create a robust profile for that component. As I mentioned before, we recognize that there's a gap in the transactions between the LIS and the PAC system, and that's what we're currently and actively working on. We have a large, all of the foundation of the digital pathology workflow is based on work that was done before in the clinical laboratory. So it's, I think very robust. It uses existing LTW, LAW transactions and builds upon them. And so, and you're going to hear about those in more detail in just a moment. So please consider having your product in a Connectathon with other leading digital pathology vendors this year. It's the effort required is very low, I think, for the return on your investment. you get a cohort of other very bright and engaged individuals to work with, both in other vendors, but also academic, those with academic interest in this area, and a lot of volunteer effort. So you get, I think, a big bang for your buck by participating in the teleconferences. Even if you don't have time to attend or you have a conflict with the regularly scheduled teleconferences, there's always an opportunity to review the minutes, provide feedback, look at the documents, look at the use cases, and interact through the Google group. So you can interact asynchronously with the rest of the technical experts that are trying to advance the interoperability around digital pathology. Next slide. So DPIO in a little bit more detail. Next slide. This is our area of current interest. We want to be able to identify when a digital asset has been created by a scanner. So there's two kind of different workflows that we support, two primary workflows. One is where glass slides are loaded into a whole slide imager, and the LIS knows nothing about it. The other situation is where the LIS is really driving the acquisition by the scanner and sending information to the scanner. So we want to be able to have digital assets as they're created, be able to send requests, and we want to be able to have availability notifications sent back to the LIS system when there's digital assets that are available for viewing. You know, there's one of the areas that we consider as part of these profiles and the use cases is how the physical assets interact with the digital assets. Of course, the LIS system is very much focused on the manufacturing process of these physical assets. It's very limited in terms of today, in terms of what is covered in terms of the digital assets. But if you're an LIS vendor, I think it's really important to define you know, what should be in or out of scope of a particular actor, in this case, the LIS versus the PACS system. So these are all areas of open discussion, and look forward to your engagement in helping us sort out exactly the roles, specific roles of each of these different actors and the types of transactions that we need to support. And again, looking to finalize these coming this summer. Next slide. So this is a pictorial representation of how the LIS might interact with the PACS system and the acquisition manager in terms of scheduling procedures, and then the PACS system indicating the availability of a new digital specimen. It's being built in close collaboration with DICOM Working Group 26. We want to be able to support the different workflows that you as vendors are wanting to provide your customers in your product. And I think we've already explained that you know, our acquisition modality is really our scanning device, and then we break down you know, a single request into imaging work order steps that defines the details for image acquisition. So defining the magnification, you know, the type of stain, all these kind of things that are important to be able to interpret that digital image and create the DICOM image file are all part of the work that we're trying to flush out. And again, look forward to working with you on this. Next slide. All right, so I mentioned this briefly, evidence creation. Next slide. This is a very exciting area. Of course, it's yet to be developed. It's there only conceptually as part of the holistic framework, but there's really exciting use cases, and I know that there's many vendors out there in this space looking to get their algorithms integrated into PACS systems. IHE is a brilliant way to make sure that your algorithm is available across the largest array of different PACS systems and able to interact with LIS systems. Today, there's a lot of copying and pasting going on. It's error prone, it's time intensive, The IHE profiles are really going to help create automation and interoperability among these systems that are being developed today, and allow them to exist within the existing laboratory information ecosystem. So use cases such as rare event detection, these are things that humans fail at quite regularly and are very tedious for a human, such as detection of a single acid-fast bacilli in a patient that might have been exposed to tuberculosis, for example. But there's many other things that are easily missed, and could definitely represent a critical result that needs to be called back, and would have directly affect the care of a patient. And these are things that the machine through machine learning or image analytics might be able to assist the human on, or provide a screening function for, or provide a QC check for, to make sure that patient care isn't compromised. Of course, there's already many quantitative analyses that occur today digitally that in the United States are approved by our Food and Drug Administration, our regulatory body, and including biomarkers for breast cancer, such as Ki67, estrogen receptor, progesterone receptor, HER2/neu. But being able to count mitotic rates has application in other areas as well, such as neuroendocrine tumor analysis and prognostication. And there's many other areas, I think, where these analytics are going to aid the pathologist in becoming a better pathologist and in becoming more efficient, and being able to provide more information to our clinical colleagues and patients than we've been able to provide before, and do it really at less cost to the health system, because of the ability to infer hopefully greater information out of what's flowing through the digital pipeline. So including better identification of tumors, prioritizing slide review, looking at various metadata, complexity of cases, those kinds of things to ensure that errors aren't made. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. So we wanted to ensure that there was close interaction with DICOM Working Group 26. So we are meeting together in Budapest at the next face-to-face meeting. You are welcome to attend. We want to make sure that that we're fully supporting the new standards for standardized annotations. Identify if there are gaps either in DICOM or in IHE, and if so, together come up with the best way to fill those gaps. We've already started a mapping of data elements between HL7 and DICOM supplements, but again, that's another area that would benefit from further review and development. And then, of course, beyond the digital image, we actually have the structured report component of this that also would benefit from additional development. Next slide. Okay, and with that, we do have some profiles for the September Connectathon, but I think I'm going to turn it over here to Ricky.
No, I think you're going to talk one more time about the DPIA, because that's the first profile, and that's still digital pathology.
Let's go on to the next. That's right. Okay. Yeah, one more time.
Area of expertise, so well.
Of course. I thought we were further ahead. All right, so this is DPIA. So this is the one that's been published and identifies how to acquire a digital image from a scanner. The acquisition manager, again, to remind you, is the software that interacts directly with the scanner. And as mentioned, there's two different workflows, one where information is broadcast to the scanner about the slides that are going to need to be imaged, as well as an ability just to put a glass slide into a scanner and then have the acquisition modality query the scanning software for the information that it needs, such as magnification, boundary areas, those kinds of things, parameters to properly scan that slide in. And then, of course, status changes messages as various issues occur with the scanning, including proper scanning or an error condition. Of course, once the image scan is generated, it needs to be stored somewhere. So we have a few transactions to support that. The last component there is the ability to display that image. Next slide. And this is that same pictorial that we started with. Again, the basis was in IHE law. It supports DICOM metadata and the data model. DICOM, of course, has its basis in the radiology field, and there's additional work necessary to think about the data model parallel in pathology. What is a series? What's an individual scan? LIS systems today really don't have good, robust support for managing multiple scans of a single glass slide. And so the question is, where is that best handled? If you were to take a hypothetical example of, multiple pieces of tissue on a single slide, where one is in focus on one slide, on one scan, and another's in focus on another scan, how would we combine those two, or how do we keep them separate, or how would we tag them in a way that we recognize that both of those scans are important for the care of a patient? So we're definitely soliciting some feedback on open issues. Next slide. And these are the Connectathon test cases that are currently under construction. And it would welcome your participation in this. Still relatively all basic, kind of a minimalistic, foundational number of data elements. I don't think it's anything too complicated. Most of the systems, I think, in the market would be able to support it. So please, again, come out, try to interact with other vended systems, and see what you can do to help support this interoperability initiative.
I can add something also about the tests. As Raj said, they are currently under construction. We are planning to do a final review of the tests in the next month. We will have our next call on April with a final discussion about them. And these are the Gazelle tests that we are going to define. Mainly, there are two of them that address the transmission of an image acquisition request from between a modality and manager in the two ways that are defined by the profiles, a sort of kind of image work order step broadcast. This means that the acquisition manager broadcasts to the various modalities the request of image scans, or a query for IWOS, where it's the modality that queries the manager about the jobs that it has to do. There is also a full workflows test that addresses both the HL7 version 2 parts of the profile that are query for broadcast or query for IWOS, together with the radiology parts of the profiles that are those that involve image saving in the archiver, image storage, sorry, in the archiver, and also image retrieval and display, but by an appropriate actor. All these Gazelle tests are linked. So, for example, if I click in one of them, I will also check the definition of the tests. We are not inside the Gazelle website because these tests are still under construction. So we have some Google Docs that reflect the structure of the tests as we are defining them. And so here you can find all the precondition and the description of the tests, and all the HL7 version 2 transaction, or also the DICOM transaction according to the kind of the test required, and also all the sections dedicated to the monitors about the evaluation of the test itself. So we will also see other kind of tests of Gazelle tests according to the other profiles that we will talk about soon. And I think that that's it for these Gazelle tests dedicated to the PIA, and so we can move on to the laboratory testing workflow. So I will give the floor to Ricky.
Yep, next slide, please. So the laboratory testing workflow is one of the older profiles we have, as you can see by the number of on the transaction. It's lab 1 and lab 2 through lab 5. So this is one of the older profiles, but it is one that is one of the 2 profiles that will get you 50% off for the registrations. It deals with ordering and scheduling the testing from the order placer to the order filler, and then within the order filler, processing and organizing the actual testing between the order filler and the automation manager, and then the automation manager forwarding the results back to the order filler that can then send it back to the order results tracker, which can be on either location in the placer or the filler side of things, usually on the placer side of things. So the systems involved here are the EMR or EHR system on the provider side, the LIS system on the lab side, and any lab automation or middleware that is used inside the lab. This profile supports specimen being collected at different places, so it can be collected by the order placer, it can be collected at the laboratory, or it can be collected by a third party. There are enough transactions between lab 1 and lab 2 to deal with those status updates of, the specimen has been collected, the specimen has been received by the lab, the testing has been started. So all of those process steps until the laboratory actually starts working on the testing are supported with this profile. Obviously, the benefits are that, you have single order entry on the EHR side. The physician doesn't have to use a web portal to type in that order again, or the lab person doesn't have to transcribe it off a paper order coming in. The laboratory will know that it's supposed to see a specimen that might never arrive, so they can do some sleuthing and figure out where that specimen went and what's going on here. And then it reduces transcription errors and hopefully improves throughput and saves phone calls and paper reports. It also provides laboratory data in discrete fashion back in the EHR system, so that it can be used for trending in the patient's record. Next slide. So these are the Connectathon test cases. They are in Gazelle, and I don't know, Alessandro, if you want to click on one of them, we can.
We can
show people what it looks like in.
Okay, here we are inside the Gazelle environment, as this is a test that's already in Gazelle and that has been tested by vendors since several years. So in particular, this is related to the lab 1 transaction. So it's an order filler an order placer, sorry, that sends a request about test orders to an order filler. So there is we have also the choice from the order placer. He can choose which kind of dialogue or the allowed HL7 messages can use to send the orders, and then are addressed also situation of new order creation, replacement of a previous order, or cancellation of a previous orders, and some trigger events related to that. Usually a gazelle test is structured, as I said before, with a series of instruction and a series of steps where the vendors have to perform the related transactions. So there are some steps, some of them are required, some of them are optional to do, that address the requirements of the tests. And usually the test itself is related to one or more use cases described in the profile. And there will be an evaluation from the point of view of messages compliance. So the fact that the messages sent by one vendor to the other are compliant with the IHE profile and transactions that we are testing, and also also a kind of evaluation at vendor's desk in relation to the information that their systems and also their graphical interfaces in their system receive from one side to the other. This in order to ensure that there is interoperability between the two. This is true for every one of the tests that you have to perform. Okay, so that's all, and we can move on to the laboratory analytical workflow.
Thank you. Next slide. So the laboratory analytical workflow goes between the analyzer manager and the analyzer. So this is the IVD test instrument that is actually performing the testing, and it supports two ways of dealing with it. The analyzer manager can send out all the analytical work order steps, or AWOSs, to the analyzer. And so it's a push order from the analyzer manager to the analyzer, but it also supports the situation similar to on the DPIA side, where a slide would show up at the scanner. In this case, a lab tube would show up at the analyzer, and the analyzer can go query and say, hey, I have this specimen here. What am I supposed to do with it? So that's the Lab 27 transaction. And then obviously for either the broadcast or the query, we will want the analyzer to send back the results, which comes back in the Lab 29 transaction. The interesting thing about the LAW profile, it's been around for a little bit. It's been tested quite a bit, and it has been integrated into the CLSI Auto 16 profile, or it is the CLSI Auto 16 profile, but it does identify or allow the participants to declare specific profile options that they support. So if an analyzer can support sending supplemental results like raw values or graphs or images, then they can declare that they're supporting that profile. They can if they can handle multiple runs, that's a different profile. If they can support microbiology with representation of an isolate, that's and parent-child orders, that's another profile. And then if they can support updates to the work order steps, that's also a different profile. So this one is a little bit more compartmentalized, so that you can really that each system doesn't have to support everything that this profile has to offer. You can pick and choose, basically. Next slide. So all these test cases are already built in Gazelle, and it allows for testing specific profile pieces as well as the base underlying test. And this is also one of the profiles that gets you the 50% discount if you sign up for testing this one. Next slide. Oh, and that's up to you, Alessandro.
Yes, that's up to me. About another new project, a new profile that we have developed since a couple of years, which is the specimen event tracking profile. And this profile has some history from which it came, because the first idea was that in the context of LBR profile, laboratory specimen barcode labeling, we wanna try to create a new transaction to ensure the fact that once a broker machine have created and produced a labeled container, the production of the labeled containers and also the collection of the specimen will effectively occur. So we want to trace these two events. But after that, we realized that these are some events that are outside of the context of LBL. So from that idea, what the committees built is a new profile, which is called the specimen event tracking, with the aim to track all the major events that occur in a life cycles of a specimen from the moment that it has been collected inside the barcoded container, since to its disposal. So to track all the major operation that occurs on the specimen. So that's because this is a profile that covers and involves all the other. If you remember the slide where Ricky talked about all the overview of all profiles covered by PaLM, because the tracking is something that that can do in the specimen in a context of laboratory testing workflow, in a context of laboratory automation, in a context of biobanks, and so on. That's because we identified some major use cases that are those reported on the left, that are the tracking of the specimen in the context of the container delivery and specimen collection. So we say from the moment when the label container has been prepared, it can happen also with the usage of an automatic broker machine. So in the context of LBR profile, or also manually by an operator, we can say. And then the specimen has been effectively collected. So we are checking these two events. Then the second use case covers the tracking of the specimen in a context of inter and intra-organization. So between, for example, two different labs, which are also far the one from the other, when there is a sort of subcontraction between the two. For example, when a laboratory requires to execute an order that cannot be done inside the laboratory itself, so it is subcontracted by a third party. What happens is that the collected specimen has to be sent from the laboratory lab A to lab B to execute the order, and often lab B also has the need to re-identify the specimen, so to relabel the specimen, to accept it, and also it could refuse it if the quality of the specimen itself is not sufficient to execute the exam. The same could also happen inside the same factory between, for example, a ward and the laboratory in the same hospital. The third one involves the tracking within the laboratory, related, for example, to the context of the laboratory analytical workflow profiles. So when, for example, a specimen reaches a sort of kind of device automation to execute some tests, then go to another device to execute some other tests. Or also we need to derive the specimen for example, in the context of aliquoting, or also in the pathology, in the context of all the operations that are needed to the specimen before obtaining the slide to be scanned, for example. And the fourth, instead, is in the context of biobank, specimen tracking inside the biobank. So when a specimen reaches a biobank, and also where a researcher can retrieve the specimen to make some tests, and then store again the tests, the specimen, sorry, in a biobank, or also the specimen needs to be disposed of after the testing, and so on. These are the four major use cases. What we did is to define a list of major events that it is important to be tracked, and we see this list in the right part of this slide. It is important to say that the scope of the specimen event tracking is that to track some major operation on the specimen that are these listed here. Atomic operations are out of the scope of the profile itself. And then what we did is to define for each of these events a set of metadata that are important to be tracked for that event. For example, for a specimen departed event, it's important to say which is the laboratory the specimen is sent from, and the laboratory where the specimen has to arrive, for example, and so on. And this came to the definition of a set of new HL7 version 2 messages that are currently under ballot to define and to codify in HL7 all these kind of events. You will find all the reference of all the metadata for each kind of events, and also the related HL7 message in the profile definition. So the transaction is only one. It's the lab 40, and the actors are simply specimen event informer. That it's the actor that it's linked to the actor coming from other profiles. We can say that generates the event. For example, if in the context of LBL, laboratory barcode labeling, a label broker produces a labeled container, so the event informer which is linked with this actor knows all the information about that label container, can generate the corresponding event that is sent to another actor, which is the specimen event tracker. What we require to the specimen event tracker is only to be able to collect all these events. We can have also many specimen event tracker according to different lab locations, for example. But the only things that we required to this actor is simply to collect the events. What the actor will do with this event, for example, some mining and some business intelligence operation, are out of the scope for the profile itself. And this is the list of Gazelle tests which are under construction also as DPIA are, that we are planning to define and to propose also to the vendor. You can see on the right a column named relating PaLM profiles, that because the test derived from one of the use cases I talked about just before, and these use cases are somehow related to all the known profiles of PaLM. So, for example, the test of the events related to containers delivery and specimen collection could be related to LBL and LTW profile, while tests for the specimen checking within the laboratory are related to LDA and low profile, which are the profiles that address these events and this operation inside the PaLM domain. We can also click on one of them, the simplest one, which is this one for specimen container preparation and collection. Also, we have the Google Drive because they are all tests under construction. And here simply the context is that the informer collects the information about specimen preparation and containers and collection, sorry. And then there will be, there is the same transaction, which is always the lab 40, but according to the different kind of event to be tracked, we will have also a different kind of HL7 message proposed for that event. So that's it for all the kind of events. Here there could be vendors interested to track everything, we can say, so to track all the events related to all the other PaLM profiles, or also that could be, in my opinion, also a scenario when a vendor, for example, that already came to the Connectathon to test LBL or LTW, could be also interested to implement the related part of set, which is linked to this profile. So interested also to make a subset, to make a subset of these tests. Obviously, we hope to go into production, so into Gazelle with all these kind of tests as soon as possible. I hope immediately after the PIA. And one thing also to add is that for both profiles, the PIA and the set, we are also creating the HL7 V2 profile needed to Gazelle for the Gazelle validators, because one of the tools that the most popular tool, I can say, that is available to the vendors for every profile that is related to HL7 V2 transaction, but not only to V2, also to other standards, is the validator that allows to validate the exchange messages inside an IHE transaction. So to ensure also in the preparation phase for the Connectathon that the messages produced by the system are compliant with the technical frameworks and so with the profile. That's it also for set, and I think that this is the last. No, okay, it's another part, so I can give the floor back to Ricky, I think, for
yeah,
that.
it's just you know, if you, besides going to the Connectathon, you know, if you have interest in any of these profiles, if there are any questions you have, you can join IHE and you can help participate and move our PaLM profiles forward. If you're interested at all, obviously you're on this call in the pathology and laboratory domain. Join our Google group so that you can keep up with at least what we're talking about, and help us out move these profiles forward and get better structured data into EHR and LIS systems. So I think the next slide says questions. Oh, the alphabet soup. So yes. There were lots of acronyms in the presentation. So if you don't know any of them, there's this glossary back here that might help you through all those acronyms. So any questions? I think
the last thing I might add,
answer some in the
is that we have a face-to-face coming up in Budapest with a DICOM joint working group on June 14th and an IHE PaLM meeting on June 13th. In conjunction with EDCP, the Digital Congress 2023.
Okay, I will stop presenting in order to see the audience, because if I have a full screen the presentation, I don't see anyone. Okay.
There you go. So we've tried to answer some of the questions in the chat, but if there are any we can answer talking, or if people have questions, feel free to start asking.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Anil. Can I ask one question?
Of course.
Yes, I'm working for a software company called as Meta Systems. Our scanners, for our scanners, we are, we are implementing software to generate whole slide images as per DICOM standard. So this is very new. Newly, we have started implementing this. So if you have any questions related to compliance checks or with respect to this DICOM IOD itself, because we are very much new to this IOD, to whom we can contact?
So I think the email that we provided, palm@ihe.net, will reach the entire group. DICOM Working Group 26, it also has a Google group. And so I think you have two different resources you can use there. I think specifically if you have DICOM related questions about, technical specifications, those kinds of things, probably it's best to go directly to DICOM. And I'm sorry, I don't have the direct email there, but Kevin Schaap can get you connected with the DICOM group. He's also the secretariat for that group. So by his email that you saw on the last page of the presentation can get you access to the experts in the DICOM Working Group 26.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I might add that although emailing DICOM Working Group 26 is good, I would also encourage you to join IHE PaLM because we have experts in DICOM, such as Ruben you see chatting there on the side, joining the calls as well, and as well as others. And so sometimes it's a great place to learn. I learn a lot on every call. Sure,
we will do it. Yeah.
And Kevin Schaap is also on the IHE PaLM, because CAP is also the secretariat for IHE PaLM. So in Kevin, you have the centerpiece for both groups. So
okay.
Any other questions? Right. Well, if there are no other questions, and if any questions come up later, feel free to send them to the PaLM Google group. And otherwise, we hope to see some of you at the Connectathon. That'd be great. And thanks, Angel, for hosting the webinar for us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for your time. I will put the recording online as soon as it is available, probably tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.